Hi there, this is Jasper, and I'm doing my first knife review ever. I chose the Sebenzas for that because these knives are considered by a lot of people to be the ruler that a lot of other high-end knives, production knives, are measured against. And part of the reason for that is the tolerances at the Chris Reeve factory. These knives are manufactured, I think, within 10 thousandths of an inch, and the fit and finish and the attention to detail at the Chris Reeve factory is just phenomenal. Um, every Chris Reeve knife you get, the blade is perfectly centered. This one was my first Chris Reeve knife ever, and I've had it for several years. And I've taken it apart probably 200 times, and every time I put it back together, it ends up just like that. This knife is very nicely broke in. The blades on the bushing system in these makes these just buttery smooth. When you open and close these knives, if you ever get one in your hand, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. They have these brass washers for the pivot system, so the blade actually doesn't come in contact with the scales or the pivot screw. There's a separate bushing in there. That's the interface between the handle and the blade. And it makes it just buttery smooth. This one is very well broken in, but from the factory, sometimes they do come pretty tight. I haven't used this one quite as much. I tend to carry the larger one more often, but the this one is very tight, or it was anyway. I've It's broken in some, but before, man, it was making my thumb tender from flicking it open and closing it 1,000 times a day. When you first get these knives, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. The first time you get a Chris Reeve knife, you're gonna have a biggest bruise on the end of your thumb. It's unreal. Anyway, the blade shape is a drop point. It is a very functional blade shape. It's got a nice belly. That's going to be most of what you use when you slice. The tip is amazing. It is perfectly sharpened. And another reason I like this blade shape is right here. If you sharpen your own knives, you'll know exactly why I absolutely love the heel of this blade. You can take the sharpening stone right up to the edge or over the edge and not mar the handle of the knife and get every inch of that blade. So I love the blade shape. As far as having these in your pocket goes, they are not super light, but for the size, they are very respectable. This one is only 3 ounces and this one's 4.7. The large, for a 3 5/8 inch blade, 4.7 ounces is really nice for a titanium frame lock. The lockup on these is between 50 and 75%, I believe, from the factory. That's what Chris Reeve considers a pass. Anyway, in the pocket, these things are very nice. They almost disappear because they are fairly thin and not too heavy. The small one is definitely better than the large. This one I take when I'm hunting or if I'm doing a lot of outdoor stuff. But if I'm just going shopping or something like that, this is probably going to be the size of knife that I take. So, because I don't need 4 inches or over 3.5 inches of blade. And if you're in a state that's not very blade friendly, this is probably going to be your only option. This is definitely over 3 inches. This was just under, I think it's 2.94 inch blade length. The pocket clip is pretty good. It's really strong, and the bead blasted finish on these handle scales provides pretty good traction without tearing up your pants. If you're hanging upside down, the large, if you have it worn out like mine, the handle scales aren't very grippy anymore, it might slide out of your pocket. But like I said, I've carried this for years, and I've never had it try to sneak out of my pocket. Of course, I don't hang off of ladders upside down. The specs, this is 3 ounces, 4.7. When they're open, the total length on these knives is, on the large, is 8.33 inches, and on the small is 6.875 inches. The titanium scales, pocket clip, and thumb studs are all 6A 14V titanium. The handle material is S35VN, which is Rockwell hardness. It's heat treated, to 58 to 60 on the Rockwell hardness scale, which is pretty respectable for S35VN. Now, if this is your first Chris Reeve knife, or if you're looking at them, I would recommend getting the small one first, unlike I did. I live in a state where I can get away with having a larger knife, but the small is definitely going to be the better option for carrying in your pocket if you have smaller hands. I have pretty large hands. This small one nearly completely disappears in my hand. So, but it is very comfortable. It doesn't, I can get 4 fingers around it fairly easily. I usually just use 3. And the jimping is pretty darn good. That jimping is probably one of the best that I've ever seen from a production knife, not custom knives, but for production knife, this jimping is phenomenal. So if you are looking to get a Chris Reeve knife and you only maybe want one Sebenza and you do want a larger knife, then maybe getting the Menundi, because it is so similar in size to the small Sebenza, if you want something that you would wear in maybe a suit for an EDC. The Menundi might be better, but that's another review. But so these knives are phenomenal. I would highly recommend getting them, especially if you've never held a Chris Reeve knife before. They are a little bit on the pricier side. I saved up for months before I got this one, and because of the double thumb lug option, I'm pretty sure I paid like $4.55. It was a long time ago. I might be wrong, but this one I purchased a little while ago, and I believe it was, with the double thumb stud, was just over $400, and that was shipped from the Chris Reeve factory. So overall, really, really good knife. Highly recommend them. If you've never held a knife of this quality before, it's worth every penny. A lot of people would say, why would you pay $500 for a pocket knife? It'll do the same thing. I got a little Kershaw that'll do everything that this knife will do. Yes and no. Part of the reason for these knives is a lot of people just have the desire for something that has a very high fit and finish, just a collectability, more or less. If I wanted to sell both of these knives right now, I could probably get close to every dollar I spent on them. And the company that they come from is, they stand behind their product 110%. When I got this knife the first time, the box was damaged during shipping. At least I'm pretty sure it was. It had some marring on the handle scales, and the blade wasn't perfectly centered, as I had come to expect from watching all the reviews on them. I gave them a call to see what was going on, and they said to send it back to them. Less than a week later, I got it back in the mail, and it was absolutely flawless. The handle scales were refinished, the blade was perfectly centered, and it came with a check for my previous shipping charge. So the company is every bit as good as the knife. Dealing with them is just an absolute pleasure. They stand behind their product. They're very friendly on the phone. But I'm running pretty close to the 10-minute mark, so I think that's it. See ya.